Otto Preminger had an awful reputation as a tyrant on the set, one who could be especially rough on actresses. Gene Simmons hated him. But it should be noted that after all the horrible personal problems Gene Tierney suffered in the 1950s, including being committed to a sanitarium, it was Preminger who offered her a comeback in 1962, casting her in Advise and Consent. Preminger may have had his faults, but he was steadfastly loyal to his closest colleagues. Where the Sidewalk ends shows the usually sophisticated director playing rough on turf more familiar to guys like Sam Fuller, Phil Carlson, and Don Siegel. In this case, with big assists from Ben Hecht, Joseph Lachelle, and Dana Andrews, Otto knocked it out of the park. This might seem like a minor film compared to later works like Bonjour Tristesse, Anatomy of a Murder, and Exodus, but as Noir, it's an overlooked gem. To me, one of the high points on Preminger's resume. But I do want to lodge a post facto complaint, especially as a lifelong asthma sufferer. Why are the asthmatics in movies always creepy hoodlums? How come you never see a detective snorting decongestant? Or some hot-to-trot dame? No, it's always some slimy, beetle-browed gangster. The slimy, beetle-browed gangster in this film, Gary Merrill, was just starting a series of second leads for Fox. This was his flashiest role to date, although the most important one would come next, in All About Eve, opposite Bette Davis. He and the Grande Dame were an instant item, and both ended up divorcing their spouses so they could get married. That was a tempestuous 10 years, ending in divorce. Craig Stevens had been in Hollywood about 10 years, but hadn't accomplished much beyond marrying Alexis Smith. It'd be 8 more years before Stevens left his mark in pop culture, playing Private Eye Peter Gunn. The popular TV show transformed the image of the Private Eye from a rumpled shamus who never gets the girl to a big city playboy who beats the dames off with a stick. A very cool show, created by Blake Edwards and featuring a terrific theme by Henry Mancini. The show made Stevens' career, even though it only ran for 4 years, from 1958 to 1961. And let's not overlook Ruth Donnelly, who just about steals this picture, dishing out a ration of spicy Ben Hecht dialogue.
What's the matter? I'm trying to help you. You don't know how to make love, so I'm making love for you.
Her exchanges with Dana Andrews are reminiscent of The Front Page and 20th Century. Hit plays Hecht wrote in the 20s and early 30s with his partner Charles MacArthur. They were crammed with wisecracking dialogue and colorful characters Hecht had gleaned from his days as a newspaperman in Chicago. When he got to Hollywood in the late 20s, Hecht practically took the place over, becoming the most prolific and highest paid writer in town. He wrote original and adapted screenplays by the barrel load and did uncredited rewrites on major films like the 1937 version of A Star is Born, The Hurricane, Angels with Dirty Faces, Stagecoach, and most famously, Gone with the Wind. And the amazing thing was, he had utter disdain for it. His own taste ran to artier things, including some bizarre films he produced and directed himself, outside the studios. Pictures like Crime Without Passion, The Scoundrel, and Spectre of the Rose. But he loved taking Hollywood's money and turning the hack work around in incredibly febrile bursts. It was effortless to him, and it's remarkable how much of it is really, really good. And lastly, I point out the ferret-faced dress designer in one scene. He's not an actor. That's renowned couturier Oleg Cassini, who at this time was as famous for being Mr. Gene Tierney. They'd been married almost 7 years, and Cassini treated his wife like she was one of his creations, his greatest creation, really. Cassini was a worldly sophisticate, and Tierney was a Brooklyn deb that he made over into a fairy princess, not unlike Waldo Lydecker and Laura Hunt. Now, next week, I'll be playing a pair of aces, Robert Mitchum and Robert Ryan, who who, along with Elizabeth Scott, star in The Racket from 1951. It's a remake of a 1928 film that was one of the first Academy Award nominees for Best Picture. Remember to weigh in on the Noir Alley Facebook page or Twitter feed, even if you're all bunged up like a barrel-house vag. I love that line, and the way Carl Malden delivers it. So for you kids out there, bunged up would translate today as, well, need I say, a barrel house was a saloon, one typically fronting a brothel, and vag is short for vagrant. So on Monday, if your boss tells you, you look all bunged up like a barrel house vag, don't ask for the raise. See you next week.